Okay. So the first point in PFM crown preparation is margin positioning. So the optimum is 0.5 millimeter supragingival. So how we measure 0.5 millimeter supragingival? So this is our gingival margin, right? Yeah. So you hold the perioprobe. So perioprobe has the Williams perioprobe. It has first three markings are 3 millimeter. So where does the 1 millimeter end and where 1 millimeter like the next millimeter starts, right? How do you know? So if you can see, there is this from beginning there is a black marking. Okay. So if you look at the black marking, before the black marking is 0.8 and the black marking is 0.2. So that makes it 1 millimeter.
1 mm.
Okay. So when you go up to the end of the black marking, that will be your whole 1 millimeter. And then 0.5 will be just the tip. So here mine is like 0.5, some places are 0.6 also, and which is okay. But then if the margin went like there was no margin at all, it's all sitting on the gingival margin, that will be like equigingival, which is okay, which is satisfactory also. Okay. And if it is little bit more than 0.1 millimeter, then it is satisfactory as well. But ideal is 0.5. And then if you look into the next criteria, margin is equigingival or less than 1 millimeter supragingival. So less than 1 millimeter, that means that 0.5, 0.6, 0.8 is also acceptable. Okay. So that is our buccal, like all over. So buccal, proximal, and then lingual. Okay. So here maybe, no, that's okay. It's 0.5. Yeah, this 1 point, it's little bit more than 0.5. It's kind of 0.8. Okay. And yeah, I think in the proximal it's 0.5. Yeah. All right. Then borderline would be margin is 1 to 2 millimeter supra or less than 1 millimeter sub. So that's our margin position. So we have 3 points in our margin. So margin position, margin width, and margin form. So margin is to be, positioning is 0.5 to 1 millimeter supragingival, and then marginal width. So width is different in buccally and lingually. Okay. So buccally it needs to be 1.2 to 1.5. So our safe zone is 1.5. So you hold, so from our buccal margin would be from contact point to contact point. Okay. So from here to here it needs to be 1.2 to 1.5. So
on the near to interproximal it should be 1.2, and somewhere in the middle it should be 1.5. Is that what you're saying?
no, keep it 1.2 all around,
All around.
but you can go up to 1.5.
Okay.
No more than 1.5.
Okay.
Okay. So from here it needs to be 1.2, 1.2, 1.2. Okay, up to here 1.2. Okay. Then when you come to the contact point, gradually you start to reduce here. So in the contact point you can actually be 1. Okay. And then when you come to lingual, then you so lingually your margin, the safest is 0.5 to 1. Okay. So you have to be under 1. Okay. So under 1 means usually 0.5 is very hard, but then if you go like mine is probably 0.8. Okay.
How do
So
you know it's 0.8? Very little marking.
very little marking. So the black marking, the inside of the black marking is 0.8.
Okay. Also within the black marking it's few mm as well. So if
Yeah.
it's inside it's okay.
So black marking is 0.2. So before the black marking, the metal part is 0.8. And then edge of the black marking up to that is 0.8. And the black marking itself is 0.2. That makes it whole 1 millimeter. So that means outer edge of the black marking, when you go there, it's 1 millimeter. Okay. So the inside, so you gradually come from here, and from the contact point you start gradually. So contact point can be 1 millimeter, and then after that you come and then you go like 0.7, 0.8. Okay, so that's how it should be. So margin is 1.5 to 1.2 to 1.5 in the buccal and 0.5 to 1 millimeter in the lingual. Okay, we cannot go beyond that. So it will go to borderline. 1.5 to 2 in buccal and 1 to 1.5 in lingual will be borderline. Then the margin form needs to be smooth, continuous, identifiable. That is also important if you think about why the marginal integrity needs to be met, because of the cleanliness purpose. So if you have a margin which is smooth, very smooth, see, and then it's continuous, right? Smooth and continuous, then that means that the crown that you will make, that crown's margin will be nice and smooth and continuous, because it will replicate that margin, right? So if it is zagged, or there is, like, one point is dipping, then the crown margin that you make, it also will be zagged, and then it will not sit. When you put it in, it will not sit nicely, face to face, and then that will create the plaque retention and future problem. Yeah, so that's why we need to make that margin smooth, continuous, identifiable. But satisfactory is like in one point margin is indistinct and rough in one area, is still satisfactory. Then we have our 3D, which is damage to tooth, damage to gingiva, and debris. Then tooth selection, you have to select the correct tooth. Like you cannot do 1-4 instead of 2-3, 2-4 instead of 2-3. Then path of insertion, we already talked about it. Optimum path of insertion is parallel to the long axis of the tooth. So how do you know the parallelism? So you hold the perioprobe or your bar, and the tip of the cusp, you hold it straight with the gingival margin, and then you replicate it with your adjacent tooth. So hold at the adjacent tooth, bring it back here, okay? Because once you have started preparation, you would not know what is your reference point. So your reference point will be your adjacent tooth. So you go to the adjacent tooth, hold it like parallel, and then replicate it here, okay? So like that. And initially when I was doing the preparations, what I was doing is I was actually marking, like when I put the sound tooth in, for example here, and then I actually, with a permanent marker, I have actually marked all the way up on the gum. Okay, and then also here all the way up in the gum. So even if you have started preparation, you don't know your reference point, you can actually replicate it from here, from your marking, and then you can okay. Then that's path of insertion. So path of insertion is important because if you tilt the tooth this way or this way, or lingually or buccally, first talk about mesial or distally. So your path of insertion means the way the final crown will be sitting, right? So the final crown, if you tilt this way, can you? I think I have taken it out here somewhere. Thank you. Okay. See, what I mean is, so this is my temporary crown that I made on it. So when you are inserting the crown, it should go straight in, okay, without interfering with the adjacent tooth, right? So that means our path of insertion is parallel. Okay. So what will happen if your the crown, for example, the insertion, the path of insertion has moved like that, okay? Then your crown, when it is sitting, it will go that way. So, and then it will get stuck here. So that means that you have to modify your premolar to put it in, right? And which we do not want to do. We don't want to damage the adjacent tooth, right? Then again, if you think about, if your path of insertion has moved fascio-lingually, so it has to be parallel, right? And then it has moved like that. So first of all, it will create an undercut. Second of all, because it's a PFM crown, and then if your path of insertion goes that way, right? What will happen? That then the buccally, there will be bulky in the margin area, and then thin. No,
On the
thin,
lingual.
thin on so thin on the lingual area. No, buccally, if you put that way. So bulky here to cover, and then thin here. So that means there won't be no uniform. So uniform thickness of the contour of the crown, and then it will be structurally weaker, and again we have to do tooth modification. So again, like if you think about this way, it will be the same, right? So that's why our path of insertion is important. So we need to keep it optimal. Then so undercut, there should not be any undercut on the tooth. So how do you check the undercut? That's the good important question. Okay, so first of all, if you look from the top of the tooth like that, you should be able to see the whole margin in one go. Okay, and if it is like a top tooth, then you place the mirror immediately, and then you keep tilting the mirror until you see the whole margin in one go. If you cannot see like one point of the margin, that means there is an undercut. Okay, that means the margin is encroaching inwards, and then the wall is blocking that view.
Okay.
So, and then other thing that we can do is we place our perio probe here on the margin, and then we look for the gap. Okay, so if there is if it is parallel, that there will be no gap between the wall and the perio probe, right, when you place it on the margin. But if there is an undercut, like for example the margin was encroaching here, and then you put the perio probe here, there will be a tiny bit of gap. Okay,
I didn't get. Can you repeat this one?
yeah. So if undercut means that your there will be like a encroaching in there, right? So the wall will be going inward. Okay, so if there is undercut, when you place the perio probe on the margin, there will be gap. And then if it is parallel, there will be no gap.
Yes.
I think I have a tiny bit of undercut here because I can see a bit of gap here.
Can I feel that? Because it's more of a feeling thing.
Yeah.
I can't feel.
No feeling, you can see actually. And then your perio probe is not parallel yet. Yeah, it's parallel now. Now you see that there is a gap. This point, yeah. Yeah.
This is
Tiny.
Is there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Very little. But it makes you feel, right?
No, it does not make you feel, because it says that minor undercut on one surface of the preparation that can be managed by the lab. So this one we can manage with the lab. Okay, so very tiny, like I don't know if you can see from here, like I'm putting it parallel to the long axis of the tooth, and then only this point, like no other point, only this point. There's a very tiny. Can you see now? I think it's 0.2.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this can be managed by the lab, because like I made the temporary crown and it's not blocking. Like when there is an undercut, it will block actually the crown to come out. Okay, so it's not blocking, so it's very minute.
Okay.
Yeah. Then taper we already talked about. Preparation taper is 12 degree, which is ideal. That means that it's 3 degree each surface. So 3 degree here, 3 degree here, 3. So make it 12.
How do you calculate the degrees?
So that's your taper Fisher bar.
Okay, yes.
So the taper Fisher bar angle is 3 degrees. So when you place the taper Fisher
If
bar,
there is no gap.
if there is no gap, that means you have made
3 degree.
optimum 3 degree. Okay, but then the acceptable is 20 degree. That means
5 degree.
5 degree each surface. So which is very minute. So you have to be very careful. You cannot exceed more than 5 degree. Then you will go into borderline. Then reduction. So needs to be reduction has like 4 points under reduction. Okay. So reduction, first of all, anatomy. You have to reflect the anatomy. Like the canine need to look like canine, incisor need to look like incisor, molar need to look like molar, right? Then occlusal reduction. So because it's a PFM crown, so we have to give that thickness for the occlusal force. Okay, so for PFM ideally it's 2 to 3 millimeter.
Okay.
So we don't we try to be closer to 2 millimeter, like 2.434. Okay, we don't go closer to 3 millimeter like 2.78, because that will actually, what will happen, you have reduced the more tooth structure, and then another thing that what will happen is because the length of the tooth, we already know that it also contribute to our retention, right? So if the length of the tooth reduce, there will be less retention. So we try to like keep it minimum. So 2.2 or 2.3, that should be ideal. Okay. Then lingual reduction is 0.5 to 1 millimeter. So lingual reduction is actually start from the tip of the cusp, from here all the way down. Okay. So you can be 0.5 here, 0.5 to 0.8, and then once you come around here at the tip of the cusp, you can be like little bit more, because in case of PFM, so the porcelain actually comes from the buccal all the way up to, I think, this tip of the cusp inwards. So because they need to cover the porcelain, the opaqueness has to be there, otherwise the metal will be showing, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why so 0.5 you can be, and then inside bit from here to here can be metal. So so it does not affect
Matter
us
that much.
aesthetically. Yeah, so from in the cingulum area you can be 0.5 here, 0.5, but from here I say go for 0.8.
Okay.
Yeah. Then buccal reduction. So our lingual reduction, you can be 1 to 1.5 millimeter is still satisfactory. Okay, but I would say try to keep it 1. So 0.5 in the margin area, lingual margin area, and then you go from like here 1 millimeter is also okay. Then buccal medial, buccal reduction, buccal, mesial, and distal reduction. Okay, so that needs to be 1.2. So that means our buccal reduction here and mesial and distal needs to be 1.2, because it's a PFM, and then
Yes.
you want to cover that mesial and distal so that the metal does not show. Okay, because it will be in aesthetic zone.
Yeah.
So then again, buccal reduction you can go up to 1.8. So that is a something that you need to consider, because here the reduction itself is, you can go up to 1.8, but if you go back to the margin is actually 1.5, the max. Okay, so there people get confused and then they make mistake. So margin cannot be more than 1.5 in
Okay.
buccal. Okay, here, but then the reduction can be 1.8.
Okay.
Yeah, so what happened is, when you are doing the prep, I think here aim for 1.2, but then when you come to the tip here, you can be a bit lenient, because when you're doing the second plane, you reduce a bit more, then you can be up to more than 1.5. Okay, like 1.6 or something. But here
It
make
should be
sure that
1.5.
1.5, like
So
less
it's
than
just
1.5.
that margin from the tooth till the and where the crown has to be sit, right? Okay, it has to be 1.2 to 1.2, not more than. But on the other side, say,
On the tip where you're making the second plane,
You
secondary
can
plane,
reduct more.
you can reduce a bit more, like
1.8.
1 point up to 1.8.
okay,
Yeah,
But
so
in the margin, we have to be very
less
clear,
than 1.5. Yeah. Okay, and then after that, when you finish with the prep, and then you round off all the line angles, so that means that the no pointy sharp bits, so the incisal edge and then this line angles needs to be all rounded off nicely. Okay, all right, so that's our criteria.